Yes, one more opportunity to make the right hire when you're a legendary two-time winning national championship baseball coach. You get that right. You may even tell the president what you want to do. But Will Muschamp is gone, and we wanted to bring in Gamecocks insider, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina. He is Mike Uva. Mike joins us on the Coors Light guest line. Coors Light made to chill. Mike, are you surprised that you may not be surprised that it happened, but are you surprised that it happened that Will Muschamp was let go yesterday instead of maybe Thanksgiving weekend?
Yes and no. And the reason why I say I'm not surprised is because, we all know that in this business, you need to be able to produce wins. And unfortunately for Will, he put up 28 wins during his 5 years, less than 5 years, of course, because he got the axe yesterday. But he produced 22 of those 28 wins in his first 3 seasons. And just these last 2 years, they just have not been able to find any type of consistency, whether it's been on offense or defense. And I think that's the disappointing part because we've seen defense shine for South Carolina in years past, and we've seen the offense struggle. And this season, the offense hasn't been, the greatest, hasn't been the sexiest looking product because you have fullbacks out there, you have a lot of 2 tight end sets, but the offense for the most part has been able to produce points. We saw that against Ole Miss the other night, but from a defensive standpoint, when you allow 159 points, you're not going to be able to stick around too long. So I'm not surprised by that. I am surprised, though, 3 games to go and a buyout of just north of $13.2 million. I think that surprises me more than anything.
Okay, so what does that tell us? Ray Tanner has the money because boosters were fed up enough to write checks. What do you think happened there, Mike?
I mean, the money part's going to be tough. And I said it today on the SEC network. I haven't really talked about it publicly before, but, these last couple weeks, and you could even say the last month or two, and I think this is going to be something we see with a lot of colleges, unfortunately, not just in the SEC, but South Carolina, from everything that I'm being told, at the end of the school year, they're going to have to get rid of some programs, athletic programs. And we saw that recently in state here in South Carolina with Clemson. And I think this is just unfortunately going to be the reality because of the pandemic. So it's one of those things that, there's going to be some type of blowback when that date does come, especially when you've had to spend over $13 million to buy out a coach's contract for a football program. But we all know down here football is what makes, the world go around in terms of being able to generate money. So I just don't know. I just don't know how things are going to look in terms of what programs they're going to get rid of. But I think ultimately, at the end of the day, this was a decision that a lot of boosters began to pressure Ray Tanner. And then when you have a new athletic director, when you have a new president, Bob Caslin, who also played football at Army and has a background there, it just felt like the writing was on the wall.
Interesting. All right. Mike Uva, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina, Gamecocks insider. Mike joins us on the Coors Light guest line. Will Muschamp relieved of his duties, and as Mike just shared with us, the buyout will be north of $13 million, and evidently Ray Tanner feels super confident that he can find, whether it's 2 guys or a dozen, to come up with that money. So, Mike, what kind of he's a legendary baseball coach there. I guess it's up in the air as far as if he's a really good AD. How much confidence does the fan base have in Ray Tanner at this point that he'll land Hugh Freeze or a Billy Napier now?
Well, I'm going to go back. A little bit because it's crazy. I mean, I'm a Boston boy, and my first job in TV, I worked in Greenville, Mississippi. So I was there for that Sugar Bowl year with Hugh Freeze. And the fan base for both Ole Miss and Mississippi State, as you know, is very passionate. But here at South Carolina, passionate fans, but when things start to, when things start to go south, it's like the end of the world. And everyone's being, thrown under the bus. So, Coach Tanner has done tremendous things like you alluded to with baseball, but I think the fan base they quickly forget about that. And obviously that doesn't justify the job that he's done as an athletic director, even though I think he's done a pretty solid job. Okay, football coach didn't work out, but he's done a pretty good job keeping people like Don Staley around for women's basketball. But I think, a guy like Hugh Freeze, there's no question when you have a name like that and the success that he's been able to have, and, as you guys all know and your listeners know, he's been able to not only win in big games, won the Sugar Bowl, but he also produces NFL talent, those 3 first-round draft picks right after that Sugar Bowl year. So I think that's something that grabs the attention of South Carolina, but I think what gives Hugh that added bonus, which I think is going to be the difference, I'm not saying it'll be Hugh, but I think the difference for a lot of these coaches who are trying to apply for this job or USC goes after, I think USC wants an offensive-minded guy. I think they want to be able to find someone that can generate points because they're tired of not being able to do that, even though I say that it's ironic that I say that today after we saw USC give up 700 yards just this past weekend.
Mike Uva on the Out of Bounds Show, Gamecocks Insider, walking us through what's going on in South Carolina. And Mike spent some time in Mississippi, so he understands the Ole Miss Mississippi State thing. So I guess Ray Tanner did this when he did it yesterday, Mike, so that he could get a head start on, getting through whether it's Freeze or Napier or Sark or someone else?
Yeah, I think that's the vibe that I got, and from talking to people close to the program, both yesterday and even today, and even just going back to last week, it felt like if South Carolina couldn't win against Ole Miss, that something was going to happen. And the big question mark was, okay, is Muschamp going to get fired, or is he going to play out the rest of the year and then they're going to, part ways at the end of the season? And to me, it makes more sense, even though, you look at it in two different lenses. One, I understand in terms of letting the coach out, and I've always been a fan of that. But at the same time, too, I think it is beneficial to be able to move on from a coach because, number one, the guys that you recruited, that's not fair for those athletes. Give them a heads up to let them know, like, hey, look, this is the direction that we're going in. And then it also allows you, like you said, you're able to get going in terms of getting a jump on the coaching trail. And it allows some of these big-name guys like Hugh Freeze and some of these other coaches to look around and be like, all right, that South Carolina job is going to be available so that at the end of the season, if there is any major schools, and I'm not saying Jim Harbaugh is going to get fired at Michigan, but, God forbid that he does, who's to say that Michigan wouldn't be interested in Hugh? So at least it gets, the wheels turning in people's minds a little bit early in terms of coaches saying, hey, that South Carolina job is available, even though to me, I think Gamecock fans need to realize they're not Notre Dame, they're not Texas, they're not Ohio State, they're not going to grab coaches, the big-name coaches, I believe. I think it's more so a third or fourth best option for big-name coaches to come here.
Yeah, but Freeze could be, regardless of what some people think about him, and the off-the-field craziness, nonsense. I mean, the guy's an elite coach and an elite offensive coach. So don't you think that the fan base – let me ask you this. Mike Uva, Gamecocks Insider, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina. If Ray Tanner hired Hugh Freeze, don't you think majority of the fan base would consider that a home run, Mike?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely for two reasons. One, it's a name. People like names. Now, is that to say that things would work out here? No, not necessarily. And I'm not saying that as a bash against Hugh, but I think the reality is for South Carolina, when you look at the history of their program, they haven't really been able to get coaches that have been able to come in here and have been successful for the most part. They had Steve Spurrier, who did a tremendous job. But this has kind of been, when you have the big-name coaches, this has kind of been either a retirement job or your way on onto retirement, or kind of a dead-end job. Steve Spurrier, Lou Holtz, they were both in basically retirement mode. Spurrier did a tremendous job until he obviously fizzled out and decided to walk away from the program, which ultimately led to Muschamp getting the job in 2016. But I think that's the notion, though, in the college football world, is that South Carolina, great facilities, great fan base, but for whatever reason, it just hasn't been a place where people have had success. But everyone's different, and I'm not just saying this about Coach Freeze. This could be about anyone. They might look at that opportunity and say, you know what, I'm up for the challenge. I want to be the one that turns things around. We saw what Steve Spurrier was able to do, and I'm optimistic I can do the same thing.
Billy Napier, he's another big name. How do you think would they? I don't guess he's as big a name as Freeze because Freeze has beat Bama twice. He's already done it in the SEC, won a Sugar Bowl. Would South Carolina fans be just as excited for Napier or almost as excited to grab a Billy Napier, Mike? Did we lose Mike? Oh, there he is.
I lost you there for a minute.
Yeah, I was asking about Billy Napier.
I think Billy Napier would definitely grab people's attention. Now, is it as big of a name as Hugh Freeze? Absolutely not.
Right.
But at the same time, too, I think if you can find anyone that can come in here and just have some type of success, I think it's going to just make people excited. Another name that's grabbed people's attention, and it's an in-state guy right now.
Whoops.
Chadwell over at Coastal Carolina.
Oh, yeah.
Jimmy Chadwell and what he's been able to do right now. And this is what I love. This is going to be like a popsicle headache these next couple of weeks with just hearing everyone's names. But if you want to throw even more dream coaches on there, and I know some Gamecock fans and probably some Clemson fans are going to look at me and say, "What are you talking about?" Why not give Tony Elliott a call over at Clemson, offensive coordinator? Why not give Brent Venables a call, even though I don't think he's going to go anywhere because the Suns are still playing over there? Why not give one of those guys a call? They're in-state guys. They've had success, and if you can give them enough money, why not give them an opportunity to say, why not come to South Carolina? So I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if I'm USC, like I said, it's not been a place that they've been able to land too many big-name coaches who outside of Lou Holtz and Spurrier, who are out on kind of like their retirement tour. I think you need to be able to swing for the fences. And for a guy like Freeze, if they are interested, we know that he wants to be able to get back into the SEC. Is that the right time, though, for him? Is he going to make that move then, or is he going to, kind of sit on things for a little bit and play out his options, if not this year off season, in the coming years?
Yeah. So, to me, this really looks like Hugh Freeze or bust. If Tanner and the president are okay with vetting him or convinced that he has changed, so to speak, and he's not going to mess up off the field, that you go all in on Freeze. Do you think that Freeze is the number one candidate prior to all the vetting process, Mike?
Well, I've heard mixed things. I've heard that there's some people over at USC, I won't use specific names, that aren't fans of Hugh Freeze. And even though we mentioned that, I think we'd all agree that Freeze has learned his lesson. And I'm not here to play what's morally right and morally wrong, but there's been things that people have done that are much worse than what he did.
Sure.
And let's just call it for what it is. And I think he definitely deserves a second chance at being able to coach in a Power 5 conference. I think he's doing a tremendous job at Liberty. And I think the way he's conducted himself, I think he deserves that opportunity. With that being said, like I mentioned, I just don't know if that's going to be enough to persuade everyone that you need in order to be able to make the hire at USC. But I definitely believe, and I can tell you for a fact, there are people in that building at the University of South Carolina that would love to be able to have Freeze as their next head football coach.
Liberty won 58-14 over the weekend. They're 8-0, just FYI for our listeners. Mike Uva, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina, joining us on the Coors Light guest line. Coors Light made to chill. You're listening to 105.9 The Zone, the Out of Bounds show. Mike is a Gamecocks insider, walking us through Will Muschamp getting fired and who could be hired in Columbia, South Carolina. Blake?
Yeah, Mike, we have this debate all the time, throughout the year about power rankings and what jobs are better than others. As someone who's around the program, you see the shadow of Clemson, but that's out of conference. Auburn might be a job that we thought might come open. When you kind of compare South Carolina to other jobs across the SEC, where do you rank that when Hugh Freeze is trying to decide, am I going to go to South Carolina, or do I maybe have a quote-unquote better option available in the SEC?
It's funny you said that, and we have a guy that works at our station. His nickname is Gamecock Tom. He went to USC, diehard Gamecock, and we like to bust his chops a lot. And it helps when I have another fellow Boston guy down here, and we can, bust his chops about the Steelers. Not that we can do it this year, unfortunately, so far. But we talked about that. If you look at the SEC and you said, all right, give me your top 10 dream colleges to be able to coach at the university, at the SEC. Where would South Carolina be? I don't think it would be at the top of the. I don't think it would be anywhere towards the top of the list. I think maybe some people wouldn't even have South Carolina on their list at all. That's how crazy I know that might sound. But you look at a job like Auburn and what they've been able to do in comparison to what USC has been able to do, I think Auburn's a more appealing job right now. I truly believe that. And one of the big pitches South Carolina has for recruits is the ability to be able to have great facilities. But a lot of these places do.
Sure.
A lot of places have great facilities now. And if they don't, they upgrade. I mean, it wasn't too long ago that Ole Miss upgraded, and those facilities are fantastic. But everyone is doing that. You got to keep up with the Joneses. So I think one of the things that South Carolina will lose is, and it all depends what coach comes in here, and can prove they can have a track record of being able to replicate what Muschamp did in terms of being able to produce NFL talent. Because I think truly that was one of Muschamp's strengths. He was able, for whatever reason, they weren't able to necessarily translate that into wins when they had some of these great recruits come in here, and even guys who maybe were 3-stars or maybe were under the radar guys. But Muschamp was always able to get guys to be able to go to the league, and not just go into the league, but be difference makers, and we're seeing that right now. So whoever comes in here, if you're able to do that, I think that's a must. But you got to be able to show it. A guy like Frank Freeze, he's been able to show it before, but can he do it here at South Carolina?
Oh, I think, all right, here's my opinion. We're visiting with Mike Uva, Gamecocks insider, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina. Will Muschamp gone. Is Freeze next in Columbia, Napier, Sark, Jeff Brom, among others. Here's the way I look at it, Mike. Ole Miss and Mississippi State and South Carolina are mirror images of each other. There's not a penny's worth of difference. Now, here is the difference at the very end. The East is easier than the West, and Freeze already proved that he could beat everybody in the West. And so if you drop him on what looks like a pretty darn good roster and let him do what he wants to do on offense, that gives South Carolina – it doesn't level the playing field with Florida and Georgia, and it never will, but it gives Freeze the opportunity to beat them every other year or whatever because of the offense that he runs. You buying that?
No, I agree. I think the challenge that he would have is even though he's been around the SEC and we know that there's a lot of talent in Mississippi, South Carolina has had a lot of issues in terms of just recruiting in this area because they've lost out a lot of guys to Georgia. They lost out. I mean, Clemson's turned into a place now where they don't even have to really recruit in their backyard. They can get whoever they want on a national level.
Right.
So I think, Freeze is definitely capable of being able to come here and be able to generate those type of recruits, the 4-stars, the 5-stars of the world, not just in your backyard, but just in this region. But like I said, I think I just want to be able to see it because I think there's going to be, unfortunately, some moms and dads out there that aren't going to give Freeze a chance at first until he can prove himself in this area, even though the rest of the college football world has been paying attention to him for the most part and what he's doing at Liberty, how he's been a good guy, how he's working his way back in terms of reputation standpoint. But not everyone is doing that when it comes to guys that are in high school right now, moms and dads, and those are obviously the ones that you need to be able to convince sometimes more than the actual student athlete, because those are the guys that are passing off their child to be able to say, hey, I trust you with my son.
We'll wrap it up with this. How much fun will it be if we get Mullen and Freeze in the same division again?
Oh man, it would be fantastic. I mean, just look at the SEC right now in terms of just being able to have everyone there. And man, I think being able to have your mini version of, I know it's not there's not a rivalry, quote unquote, between the two schools, but to have like a mini version of the Egg Bowl with Florida and South Carolina, I think that'd be fantastic.
Me too. And Freeze would he would close the gap on Georgia in about 15 minutes. And because Georgia is just like South Carolina with better talent, Kirby's not going to figure out the offensive side of the football. It's kind of a theme, a pattern with former Saban DCs. Kirby, I don't think Pruitt's going to get it done, and then of course Muschamp. So it's going to be interesting. Hey, Mike, I know you're busy. Mike Uva, Fox, Columbia, South Carolina, Gamecocks insider on the Coors Light guest line. Real quick, Mike, you said you're from the Boston area, the Northeast. Where'd you go to college?
I went to school at Assumption College, now known as Assumption University. So for any of our Saints listeners, that's where punt returner, kick returner Deontay Harris went to school. And I played. I was a cornerback. I was a dying breed. I was like Jason Sehorn. I'll just put it like that to be politically correct on the radio. But yeah, it was a fun time there. Brian Kelly, head coach of Notre Dame, went to Assumption, and it's one of those small schools, but had an opportunity. And here's a little tidbit. I always like being able to drop off this tidbit. Brian Kelly's very first head coaching job wasn't even a head football coaching job. He was the head softball coach at Assumption College, Division II softball.
I did not know that. Who did you grow up? What college football team did you grow up rooting for? Notre Dame?
Notre Dame, because I was a scrawny little you-know-what. I played football my entire life, was fortunate to play in college, and my dad would put quarter rolls in my pockets just so I could make weight when I played Pop Warner. So I always looked at Rudy and fell in love with the fight song, and it's ironic that Brian Kelly's now the head coach there. Not only did he go to the same college as me, but he also went to the same high school as me, St. John's Prep, which former Texans coach Billy O'Brien went to school at, and the inventor of the Ice Bucket Challenge, rest in peace, Pete Frates, went to high school at.
I love that. That is great. All right, it looks like your Fighting Irish will have a great opportunity to make the college football playoff. All right.
I got to knock on wood after you said that now because I know what's going to happen. They're not even
I love it. All right, Mike Uva, Gamecocks insider on the Coors Light guest line. Hey, Mike, thanks so much, buddy. Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Bo. Thank you.
Mike Uva, Fox affiliate, Columbia, South Carolina. If I'm Ray Tanner, I go all in. I just go ahead and offer freeze 5-3, 5-5, whatever the number is, and make him and actually try to just make him say, let's go ahead and get this thing done before the season's over. Hugh Freeze, let's see. They won 58-14 on Saturday against Western Carolina. They're 8-0. Malik Willis, this Auburn transfer, went for 306 through the air and 97 on the ground. He's just ridiculous. Like Ole Miss's offense. Just a well-oiled machine. Brad Edwards, College Game Day. ESPN will join us at 9:30. Good morning. Welcome in. The show is brought to you by Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland. For all your collision repair, Dallas Body Shop in Ridgeland.